Hello, I'm Roberta Winters, past president of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township. For several years, I've worked with students from Radnor High School who pursue independent internships with me. Once a young person signs up, we meet, we discover a personal passion, and develop a strategy to learn and share. Last summer, I had the privilege of working with Nicole Hartono. Today, she will be sharing with us what she learned as part of her internship with the audience of Radnor Network Television. Welcome, Nicole. It's great to see you. I know it's been great working with you and that you're a very busy young lady. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Nicole?
Currently, I'm a rising junior at Radnor High School.
And I think you take a lot of difficult courses, don't you?
Yeah.
And they keep you very, very busy. So I'm happy you were able to find time to meet with me today. So, how did you become interested in domestic violence? That's an issue that I don't think many people know much about.
I watch a lot of Law & Order Special Victims Unit, and it focuses specifically on domestic abuse and sexual assault. And so through watching that, I started to see how big of an issue domestic abuse really was and how it needs to be talked about more.
And does it just impact the person who's the victim?
It not only impacts the victim, but also like their friends and family. And it's often very concealed. So I think it needs to be talked about more, and that's why I'm here today.
Well, are there places to go if there are people who think they're a victim of domestic violence?
I've talked to several people who provide support for victims of domestic abuse.
Let's take a minute and talk about domestic violence in the big picture, because what I've learned from you is there are many kinds of domestic violence. Can you talk about the many different kinds?
So, you're right, there are many different kinds of domestic abuse. Physical abuse is when an abuser uses force or violence, for example, kicking, pushing, slapping, hitting, pulling, throwing a person down, biting, shoving, spitting, and using weapons.
That sounds like the TV show.
Yeah.
Are there other kinds?
Sexual abuse is when an abuser may do things such as treating a person as a sex object, taking lewd photos, putting a person's health at risk by having other intimate partners, physically attacking sexual parts of a person's body, and making someone perform sexual acts against their will.
That sounds again like those TV shows that we see, Special Victims Unit. I think there's other kinds too, aren't there?
Yeah, so emotional abuse consists of when the abuser puts a person down, humiliates them, calls them names, plays mind games, makes them feel bad about themselves, and gaslights them.
Not good. What else?
Economic abuse is when an abuser sort of like conceals family income, makes the victim ask for money, takes the victim's money, and prevents the victim from getting or keeping a job.
That sounds pretty rotten. What else do you have, Nicole?
Coercion or threats is when an abuser threatens the victim, like threatens to hurt them or to leave them or to commit suicide, report them to welfare, makes the victim drop charges, or makes them do illegal things that they might not want to do.
I don't think I'd like to feel threatened that way, would you?
Oh.
All right. More abuse for us today. Come on, what's another title?
Privilege is when they treat the victim like a servant and they sort of control all the big decisions. They act like the master over the victim, or they define gender roles.
So like being bossed around all the time.
Yeah.
Not good. Okay. More kinds of abuse.
Isolation is when the abuser will control what the victim does, who they interact with, and basically what they do in their everyday lives. Like they'll limit the victim's outside involvement, and they'll use jealousy to justify their actions.
I think there are even more kinds of abuse.
Yeah, so intimidation is when the abuser does things like smash things, destroying property, or makes the victim afraid with looks, actions, or gestures, displays weapons, or abuse pets. Minimalization, denial, and blame is when an abuser will make light of the abuse, act like it's not a big deal. They don't take the victim's concerns seriously, deny the abuse happens, shift the blame for their behavior, or blame the victim.
Put down, basically, right? Okay. Is there anything else for domestic abuse still?
So an abuser also might use children, they'll have children relay messages, make the victim feel guilty, use visitation to harass the victim, and put children in the middle of arguments or threaten to take them away.
We talked to several people last summer who support people who have been subject to domestic abuse. And I know you'd like us to meet someone special today. Who is that?
Today I'd like you to meet Michelle Brown. She works for the Domestic Abuse Project, which is a resource center for victims of domestic abuse, but I'll let her tell you more about that.
Thank you, Nicole. Let's hear from Michelle now and see what she has to say.
Michelle, thank you for taking the time and coming here today. Can you tell us about yourself and what you do?
I'm the executive director of the Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County, and I run the project, which serves all of Delaware County. We are the only organization that serves victims of domestic violence exclusively across the county, and we provide things like counseling, support and protection from abuse petitions. We have legal services. We've just started helping people with custody and divorce. And we have a safe house that we run 24/7, as well as a hotline that runs 24/7. We have been around since 1976, and we serve men, women, families. Anybody that needs help can come to our offices in media or call our hotline.
We visited you at the Domestic Abuse Project, and we had trouble finding your building. Is there a reason for this?
Well, I'm sorry that you had trouble finding our building, but there is a little bit. We don't have a sign at our office, and that's really just to be more discreet. Everything that we do is 100% confidential, and we want to make sure that people feel comfortable coming to our offices and making sure that they know that they have that confidential nature to what they're doing. So we don't have a sign. So if you do call us, we can tell you, what the door looks like, what color it is, and the address, of course, but we don't necessarily want everybody, to know what we're doing there.
You gave me a wheel that showed the different types of domestic abuse. Can you share about each of these in your own words based on your experience as I read them? Physical abuse?
Physical abuse is really that, right? Physical abuse is when somebody is hit or choked or touched in any kind of way. That would be physical. And I think that's what most people think of when they think about domestic violence, which is often why we kind of like to say domestic abuse, because it's more than just physical violence. And we do serve people for any kind of abuse, which we'll continue to talk about. But often people think that they can't call the hotline or they can't come in if it's not physical. And that's not true. People can call us for any kind of abuse that they might be suffering. There might not be laws to help people with certain kinds of abuse other than physical, but it still is abuse, and it's still something that people should get help for.
Sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse is also that. Sexual assault. It doesn't matter if you're married or in a relationship. If you do not want to engage in sexual activity, you should not have to engage in sexual activity. And so there is that. And along with sexual activity, there's also reproductive coercion. So oftentimes people keep their intimate partner trapped in a relationship because of children. And so they may force somebody to have sex and get pregnant so that they can keep them, in that relationship because they know that they can't afford to do it without them. And so that's another part of that.
Emotional?
Emotional would be, toying with people's emotions, emotional and mental, and making them think perhaps that they are, unloved or unlovable, telling them that they can't get anybody else better than they are, that they are taking them away from family or letting them think that their family, doesn't love them anymore, things like that. Mm-hmm.
Economic?
Economic, we often also talk about as financial. And financial abuse, as we learned recently, impacts 98% of people who are in a domestic relationship that has domestic abuse. And financial abuse is really something that keeps people in those relationships because they don't have the means to leave. If I live with my significant other and they are abusing me, and I don't have any money, then it's going to be really hard for me to figure out where I'm going to go. So often somebody might not have access to their bank accounts. I might have a job and earn a paycheck, but I might never see that paycheck. My partner might say, I'm going to handle all the money. And maybe it even starts that way, where somebody says, you have enough on your plate, I'm going to handle the money. You don't have to worry about anything. And that might feel really good at first. You feel like, oh, good. It's the only thing I have to deal with. But the reality is that person isn't just trying to make your life easier. They're trying to control your money and the way you use your money and what you have of those funds. So that's a really important thing that people recognize, to try to make sure you have control of your money and you know where your money's going, or that you have a separate account in some kind of way so that you can have some funds when you need it. It's a really, really challenging one.
Coercion and threats?
Coercion and threats, coercive control is that. It is convincing people, is making threats to people. It is, if I'm going to go and fill out, I say I'm going to get a PFA, a protection from abuse order against you, that you're going to convince me not to do that. You're going to tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't do that, why it's going to be bad for me, why it's going to be bad for my kids, why it's going to be bad for us in the long run because I'm going to come back even harder, I'm going to hurt you even more. It's really making a lot of threats, and it's making people feel like they can't go and do the thing that they want to do, that they can't go get custody of their children, or they can't bring a family member in to help. They're using threats to make you decide to do something different because you know that they will probably make good on that threat.
Privilege?
Privilege is when the abuser is acting like they are completely in charge, like you have to bow to them, that they have all of the privilege to do whatever they want to do, that they're the master of your house, that they're the king of the castle, and you have to do whatever they want you to do.
Isolation?
Isolation is when you are isolated from family and friends. So, an abuser might say, I just want to spend all of my time with you. I want you all to myself. And they maybe stop having you go see your friends and tell you don't go see your friends. I want to see you. And it might start out in that way, where later it might become, you're not allowed to see your friends or your family or anybody that could help you, because they know that the more isolated you are, the easier it's going to be for them to abuse you. It might even turn into quitting school or quitting the things you like to do or quitting your job so that you can't reach out to anybody else. And that person can then manipulate you to think that, oh, you only have me. You don't have friends anymore. You don't have family anymore. So it is isolation, they say, is where domestic abuse and domestic violence thrives, because there is nobody to help.
Intimidation?
Intimidation, I think, is often very similar to coercive control and threats, where it is intimidating people so that they don't go and do the right things that they know that they need to do for themselves, making sure that you feel like, I can't go get help.
Minimization, denial, and blame?
That's as most of us know, is gaslighting, making people think that it's their fault, that they deserve to be yelled at or they deserve to be punished or abused, denying that they're acting that way, but I love you, I didn't mean it, I'm not a bad person, making things seem like it's not that big of a deal, when, we all know it is a very big deal.
Using children?
And using children is a big piece of that power and control wheel, where if I have a child or I have children, using those children to say you want to make sure that your children have a roof over their head and they have clothes and they have food, And without me, without staying in this relationship, you're not going to be able to support your children, or I'm going to take your children from you. I'm going to use some of the things that you've done to me in that gaslighting, and I'm going to get custody of your children. When people have children together, that is a little bit more challenging, because often the abuser is not going to abuse the children; they're just abusing the partner. But if somebody is in a relationship where the child is not the abuser's child, that can really amplify things a lot sooner, because they don't have that connection, to that child specifically. So using children is a powerful way to keep control of somebody and keep them in that relationship, especially as a parent, as a mother, we want to protect our children. And as a lot of people, what we find is, as long as the abuser isn't hurting the child, the mother's going to stay, because the mother wants to make sure that they're protecting their children, and they worry that if they're not there, and the child is with that parent alone, then maybe the abuse is going to start happening to the child. So the mother will withstand that as long as they can.
Are some of these issues more prevalent in places like Radnor than elsewhere?
These things happen everywhere. We see at the Domestic Abuse Project victims from all counties across Delaware County. We do see more from some places over others, but primarily it is because of shame and of feeling like I'm too embarrassed to come forward. Like, maybe I have this public, persona, a reputation, and I don't want to be looked at as a victim, or I don't want my partner, who's my abuser, who maybe has a high standing in the community, to be brought out into the light, or that they're not going to be believed because of that. So it happens in Radnor just as much as it happens in any other municipality across Delaware County, but it's often more difficult for people in places like Radnor to want to come and get help. But we can help, and we can help at no cost, and again, completely confidentially.
Are women and girls the only victims of abuse?
They aren't. It's pretty surprising, I think, for some people to know that while 1 in 3 women will experience some kind of domestic violence in their lifetime, 1 in 4 men will also experience that. It has really changed over the years, or maybe the reporting of that has changed. And we also have to remember that these statistics are based off of people reporting. So I'm sure there are more women and more men who are not reporting that it happens to them, but the prevalence is high regardless.
If one were a victim of domestic abuse, what should they do?
Well, first, if you are being physically abused in that moment and you're able to call 911, you should call 911. We work with police departments across Delaware County to train them on how to assess a situation, a domestic violence situation, and how to better deal with that situation. It takes 7 to 8 times for a victim to finally make the decision to leave their abuser, which means I might be calling the police 1, 3, 7, 10 times to come to help me. And if you put yourself in the place of an officer's shoes, that could be kind of frustrating, like, I've come to this house 7 times and this is still happening, and why wouldn't you just leave? Because officers don't understand all the time all of these many reasons that people don't leave. And so we work with the police departments to train them to understand that a little bit better, so that they can have more compassion, make sure they're going to those calls, because that call that they don't go to might be the last call that they get, and for not the best reason. We also teach them what's called the lethality assessment protocol, and that helps them understand different key markers to show the level of lethality for a victim. That if is there a gun in the home? Is the abuser suicidal? Had they strangled you or attempted to strangle you before? Because there's a very high correlation in strangulation and then being attacked with a gun and gun violence. So the officers learn those things and learn kind of the level of potential lethality, and then they'll contact us. And they'll actually on the scene call our hotline with the victim, so they can talk to us and we can just try to help them figure out next steps. So 911, if you are in a physical violently situation, please call 911. But beyond that, our hotline is open 24/7. and people can call our hotline to get any kind of support they need. And you don't have to be in the middle of an argument or hiding in a closet to call our number. You could just have questions. You could just need support. You could just not know what to do next. And we can answer questions for you. We can provide you resources, and we can help you figure out the next best thing for you. And if it means that you've decided you're going to stay in that relationship, we're not going to judge you for that. We're going to still help make sure that you're as safe as you can be in that space that you're in at that time.
What happens next?
So if somebody calls our hotline, we will speak with them about what's going on and what are they looking for. Maybe somebody wants a protection from abuse order. Maybe somebody just wants to talk. Maybe somebody needs housing, and we can maybe help them with housing in our emergency safe house. And really, it's what does that person need? They could come into our office and talk to a crisis counselor in person, and would be kind of put through the same questions and conversation of what is it that you need? Here are the options that we could provide you. We work on what's called an empowerment model, and so what that means is we're not going to do things for you. We're going to teach you how to do them. We're going to provide you the resources so that you can make some phone calls, if our shelter's closed, we'll give you some numbers for some other shelters you can call. We'll give you the information that you need to get the help that you need, and then we'll be there to support you along the way.
People who experience domestic abuse are often traumatized. From your experience, what are the best ways to deal with such an impact?
Well, I would say counseling is one of the best things that you can do. And we do offer counseling. We offer up to 12 weeks of counseling for victims and also for children that have witnessed domestic violence in their home. And so we do have a wait list because there is a lot of people that want and need counseling, which is unfortunate, but we're doing a good job of getting through that list and making sure people don't have to wait too long for that. But definitely counseling, whether it's a support group or one-on-one counseling, something like that.
Have you found that those who are victims of domestic abuse are able to become independent and start new lives on their own?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's our goal in working with people who are victims and survivors is they want to find a way to live independently and not be able to be in that situation again. And we help them do that through a variety of ways. I'd actually like to introduce you to our other guest that you invited to have with us today.
So I was a victim of domestic violence. Pretty much everything that Michelle hit on the wheel, I have experienced. It didn't start out physical. It started out emotional, financial, being told that nobody else would ever love me. There was also the financial part of having 2 children, wondering where I was going to go, how I was going to support myself. I also experienced isolation. Many of my family members and many of my friends just kind of faded away because my now ex-husband would have such control of me that I wouldn't have any other place to reach out to. It was a very difficult time. My last experience was a physical abuse, which landed me in the hospital, and my mother was actually able to find DAP, and the next morning I went out to DAP and started my process for my PFA, started getting some counseling, which helped me immensely. Without DAP, I probably would not be here today. It taught me that I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor.
Thank you for having the courage to share your story today. What advice would you give victims or survivors who are in the same position as you once were?
No matter how many times it takes, keep continuing to reach out. Keep continuing to get help. Don't give up on yourself. There is help out there. We need more funding. We need more help. It should be something that we all know about. It shouldn't be a secret. We shouldn't be ashamed of it. There are many women that are experiencing abuse in any way, shape, or form, and there is always a way out and there's always help available.
Michelle, sometimes they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Are there signals in a relationship that might alert a potential victim that this relationship is unhealthy and may lead to abuse?
Yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of them out there, and some of them, start really early, where somebody might be trying to rush somebody into a relationship quickly, or love, what they call love bombing, making you feel really great and giving you all of these things, so you turn all of your attention to that person. But that's really just a tactic to get you into that relationship and start working that power and control wheel and different pieces of that. If people start to, as we spoke and said earlier, say, oh, I wouldn't be with you. I want to see you. Don't go hang out with your friends. Let's not go to your families for Christmas. Let's just stay here with that ice. If you start finding that you're being isolated from your family and friends, sometimes we do that naturally because we want to spend all of our time with the person that we're enjoying. But if it starts to become where it's not your choice, it's good to start recognizing that and push back. And certainly if people start criticizing you, making you feel like you're questioning who you are, what you're doing, those are small signs that start things. And they're things that, some of us say, oh, I would never be in a relationship like that. I would never allow somebody to abuse me. But it starts often in ways that you don't recognize until you're already kind of past a point of return, which you're not. We can return, but that's what it feels like. You're at a point where you now have self-doubt. You're questioning your ability to be independent. You're questioning your ability to manage life in any kind of way. And that person has gotten you to that place where you think that you have to be with them in order to recognize anything. Kathleen, are there any other signs or red flags that you can think of?
Absolutely. Well, a couple of things were downloading my phone calls to see who I was speaking to, following me to and from work, timing how long it took me to get to and from work. If I went to an occasion, I would get a phone call to see if I was actually there. Control of finances, control over where I was allowed to go, how long I was allowed to be there. Financially, the fact that I had 2 children and I couldn't do it on my own, and absolutely the part of being told that nobody's going to ever love you, you're never going to be able to make it on your own. You start to believe these things because you've heard it over and over again. And then we have the honeymoon stage where they start to give you gifts and kindness, and then you think, okay, it's not going to happen again, and it's going to end, and then it begins all over again. It's just a cycle that seems to never end.
Right, and that's the cycle, right, where we have this relationship where it's lovely and everything is great, and then there's some kind of tension that's building, and then some kind of abuse happens, and then there's an apology, and then there's a little bit of a honeymoon period again, and you think everything's going to be okay, and then it just happens over and over and again. And maybe the beginning of that cycle is every 6 months, but then maybe it's every 6 weeks, and then maybe it's every month, and then maybe it's every week, every day, every hour. It can turn into, and it is that cycle that just amps up, sometimes slower than others, but it is a cycle. So I think seeing that trend of things is really important.
Thank you so much to both of you. Michelle, where does the money come from to support this work?
Well, the Domestic Abuse Project, our operating budget is about $3.5 million annually. We have close to 40 staff on our team that work in all of those areas. So it's not a small amount of money to make what we do work. 64% of that comes from government funding. Which is challenging right now. It's challenging to know if it's going to be there tomorrow. 42% is from federal government, and then the other portion is from state and local government, and sometimes that's also filtered through. So 64% from government, about 25% is from private fundraising, from individuals, foundations, corporations, and then 11% is actually from our thrift shop, revenue from our thrift shop, which is called Thrift and Thrive, and it's located in Pilgrim Gardens in Drexel Hill. And so that thrift shop helps us bring in some revenue, and it also helps us raise awareness. And our clients have the ability to, we'll give them gift cards so they can shop there for things that they need, because it's great. People love to donate, for people in our safe house and for clients' clothes, housewares, furniture, but our office can't we don't have storage for that kind of thing, and we also don't have the ability to sort through things. So the thrift shop is great because we can ask people to please take it to the thrift shop, and then if clients need it, then they can choose it, or we can make sure that they get it if in that moment we know they need it. But if they don't need it and somebody else purchases it, then all of that revenue comes back in and supports those survivors and their programs. I'll also just add, Nicole, that so of those funds that come in, that $3.5 million, 75% of that is spent on our programs. About 20% is spent on our administrative costs, operating costs, our mortgage, our all sorts of stuff like that. Everything keeping the lights on, and then 5% of that goes toward our efforts to fundraise, to write grants, whether it's to the government or to foundations and things like that.
How can we help?
Well, we can use help in a lot of ways. Financially, for sure, because we are always trying to fill that gap. We have a small amount of financial reserves, but when we see cuts from government funding, it really puts us in a difficult position because, as we know, costs are raising for everything, for everyone. We did recently get a cut from some county funding and also from some state funding. Federal funding was paused on certain areas, and we're unsure if we'll get it for some of our programs. So, for example, one of the things that is not being covered in some of these cuts is the mortgage cost for our safe house. So now we have to find additional funding to be able to pay for that mortgage payment every month, which is obviously very important because we need to have that safe house. Our safe house holds up to 35 people at a time, 11 households. And so it's generally always full. So it's really important that we find ways to support that. We also can use volunteers. People can go on our website and go to our volunteer page and fill out an application. I think we just actually put up a new application. We can use volunteers for our hotline, for helping just accompany people to court, really just sitting with them and making sure that they have somebody kind of like emotional support. We need people in our office to do just some basic admin tasks and filing and sorting and doing things like that. And also at our thrift shop, people can volunteer there. So they can go on and do that. If people do want to volunteer for things that happen in our office or with clients, they will have to do a training, which is called JARS, for Justice, Autonomy, Restoration, and Safety. That's what that stands for. And that's about a 40-hour training, 20 hours in person and 20 hours online. So it's a little bit challenging because it's a lot of time, but it helps ensure people get the skills they need and that they're protected as an advocate with that special confidentiality privilege that we have. So donating funds is first and foremost what we need. Volunteering and spreading the word. Letting people know that we're here and that we have hotline cards that we can give out to people. We can put in bathrooms. We can put in offices. We can come and speak to people. We come speak to offices, to HR departments about maybe how to make sure that there's a safe space for employees to go if they need support or if they need to find help. Doctors' offices, really anywhere. We'll talk to anybody that wants to listen to us about domestic violence and how we can all help prevent it and help people who are facing those situations.
I'm sure those who have watched this show have learned a lot. I hope they will support your efforts.
Thank you.
Wow, Nicole, I'm so glad you came today to tell us more about not only the problems of domestic abuse, but also what each of us can do to help everyone. It was wonderful to hear firsthand from our survivor and from Michelle, who informed us about the Domestic Abuse Project in Delaware County. Thank you for sharing with us today, Nicole, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, I would like to express our appreciation for your continued willingness to support our efforts with our high school students and for giving them a forum to share what they've learned. Of course, we would be remiss in not thanking you, our audience, for watching and learning with us. Take care and stay well.